The evolution of your marketing will be the catalyst for the evolution of your business, and the evolution of your business will provide you with the freedom to focus on the evolution of your life. This is Evolved Marketing with Andre and Brian. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Evolved Marketing Podcast. My name is Brian Brewer, along with my co-host, as always, Andre Germachev, and we have a special guest today. Now, I'm really excited about today's special guest for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, he's what I consider one of the better marketers in the game. He's a very successful affiliate marketer, as well as some other things that I'm sure we'll get into. But he's also someone that I've known for a long time, always feel comfortable reaching out to, and he is always generous enough to reach back to me and help me when he has the time and can offer some advice. This gentleman is promoted a lot of the same programs that I have over the years as an affiliate. As a matter of fact, as many of you listeners are familiar with Legendary Marketer, Jacob has promoted Legendary Marketer in the past. He was a platinum affiliate and a speaker at one of their masterminds. Just like myself, he also went on to promote the Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi product launch. He did extremely well with that. He crushed me in sales there. He's also a ClickFunnels Dream Car winner. So you can see we've done a lot of the same affiliate promotions. But the cool thing about this gentleman is he does things a little bit differently than I, yet gets similar, if not better results from time to time. So I think we can stand to learn a lot from him. Now he's more into consulting and coaching. But like I said, we'll get into that. Let's first welcome to the show, Jacob Caris. Welcome to the show.
You, mate. Appreciate it. That was a hell of an intro. I feel like I've got something to live up to.
Well, we got to get everyone excited here. Get them pumped up, you know.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I appreciate you guys having me on and looking forward to diving into the journey and this game that we all play.
Yeah, we appreciate you having you here. So let's just start from the beginning, right? Like your journey started like somewhere around 2018 with your online business. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is and it isn't. So I originally dabbled back in like 2011, 2012 when I was fresh into the workforce. I'd finished university, went into the corporate game, was kind of training to become a qualified accountant, if you can believe it. And pretty quickly I was like, I don't know that I necessarily want to do this the rest of my life. And so I started exploring different things and actually bought like a website or Flipper. And that was my first kind of toe in the water. And that did all right. I bought this thing for like $1,000. It made me like 20 back over the next 12 months. It was pretty passive. And it kind of died off. Competition for that particular site kind of went through the roof. And the work that I used to do was working with really distressed companies. So too much debt, either liquidate, try turn around, all that kind of stuff. And if you guys remember 2008, obviously in the US, global financial crisis hit. That took a while to trickle down to Australia. So the banks really started cleaning up their act in 2011, 2012. And that was the work that we did. So pretty quickly I was thrust into this, 60, 70 hour week type job. And it just meant I couldn't kind of continue down that path. And so the next few years were pretty quiet. Always kept an eye on what was happening. But it wasn't until 2017, I was actually living in New York doing similar work, but on a lot bigger scale, a lot bigger companies. And my time there was coming to an end after 2 years. And I was like, I don't really want to go back to doing this in Australia. If you can compare the two, it's like, doing that work in New York, the minimum company size that we were working with was 600 million a year in turnover. If I go back to Australia, it's like playing in the major leagues versus, playing baseball in the backyard with your kids, right? Like just in terms of size and complexity and, the game is just a lot smaller. And so I was like, I got to find a different path. I remember this online thing exists, started reading a couple of books again. And then once you do that, you get dropped into remarketing audiences. And then that's where the ClickFunnels thing kind of came out of and became a little bit obsessed with that. And that was really the catalyst. So that was 2017, like Q1 2017. And it's been a bit of a journey since then. Yeah.
Yeah, so I see that ClickFunnels Dream Car Award. It's sitting back there behind you on the desk. So what that means, if you're not familiar, listener, is that you did well. You achieved enough active members to get to the point where ClickFunnels would not only give you that little trophy, but give you some money each month for a car, which is always cool, and probably maybe even got your picture on stage if you showed up in person. But the thing is about that award is it's pretty exclusive. And what I mean by that is if you flip through the program of any funnel hacking live event and look at the 2 Comma Club award winners, you'll see couple hundred people who win the 2 Comma Club award every year for generating over $1 million in their business. And then when you flip to the Dream Car winners, the affiliates who have hit that threshold, it's like 25 people in the entire world. So it's a pretty exclusive award. Maybe there's not as many people going after it, but either way, it takes some skill to get there. So, what did you do to get there?
Everything and anything that I could get my hands on. So I remember the ad from Russell said, do it in 100 days. And it took me a little bit longer than that. It took me about 18, 19 months in the end. But that was my just try everything phase. It started in 17 with blogging through Greg Jeffries, who you probably know. Because of the job that I was in, the clients we were working with were quite high profile. Like I was working on the bankruptcy of the biggest coal company in North America. And I was kind of pretty high up in terms of leading the team that was running that. And so I couldn't have a public presence doing other things. It would have been seen as a conflict. And I'm in another country, right? I was supporting my partner. It's like, I'm not going to jeopardize this, but I really wanted to be able to hit the ground running when I got back to Australia. And so I started blogging kind of behind the scenes. So that was the first part. First 9 months or so did like 20K with that. So it wasn't, huge numbers, but it gave me a bit of proof of concept that hey, there's something here. And then when I got back to Australia in 2018, I took a bit of time off work because I was just completely hooked from the hours in New York, which are just stupid. And I was like, this is kind of now or never. I don't have kids. I don't have a mortgage. Like life's never going to get simpler. It's only going to get more complicated from here. So I've got to work it out. Right. And I just went kind of head first. I remember I got back and then went to take a trip down to Melbourne. I go back and forth to Melbourne a little bit to watch football. And this was just after I got back from New York, and I hadn't looked at the website for a while. And I remember sitting down and pulling up my laptop and diving back into the website again. And I always remember that moment as kind of like, that was when it all really kicked off back in Australia. And from that, it was more of the blogging, got into the ads game a little bit, some Facebook ads, some Google ads, started the Facebook group early that year. And that was just me sprouting the stuff that I'd done thus far, which is little to nothing at that point, but people were interested, right? There's always a couple of people who are, a few steps behind you, and people seemed interested in listening. And I just started talking about stuff that a lot of other people were charging for. And I was just kind of doing it for free. I was like, hey, I tried this, I tried that. This worked. This didn't work. You can see that. And I was just really like open book. And that kind of got the audience growth to start happening. I was offering, unlimited messenger coaching if you join ClickFunnels, and then that quickly became something I definitely didn't want to do. I had a lady come back to me like 3 years later, and she's like, hey, can I still get that? I'm like, no, that's not happening. So yeah, it was literally everything. I got into the personal branding game, ads, the blog, and it was just bootstrap your way there. How much can you throw at a wall and see what sticks? And I was just, it taught me a really good lesson that stuck with me ever since, which is pick one goal. Don't necessarily put a time frame on it, because you can't really control that. And in a lot of cases, I think people put these unrealistic time frames on their big goals, and it means you have to compromise something, right? It means that you, like, for example, if you wanted to, like I do a lot of the coaching and consulting stuff now, if I wanted to get the advisory side of the business up to $500,000 a month, and I said, I want to do that in the next 6 months, there's every chance that I'm going to have to sell to people that I don't want to work with, right? I'm going to have to compromise my energy. I'm going to have to compromise the people that I work with. And so I'm a big fan of setting these big targets, but not necessarily putting a time frame on them. And that taught me that goal really well, or that lesson really well. You keep the goal the same. You can change the plan, but don't move the goalposts, and just put your head down until you hit that one thing and then move on to the next thing. I think people change their strategies a lot, which is fine, but they're also changing the ultimate goal that they're trying to achieve. And if you think about the different variables of outcomes that can happen, it's a mess. So pick that one thing and just head down until you achieve it, and then pick the next thing. You can change the game plan along the way. That's fine. But stop moving the goalposts, because I think people make life way too hard for themselves when they keep doing that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, just pick one goal, stick with it. It's kind of like when I first started, they told me focus on one product and just stick with it, right? Kind of the same thing. So let's go back to 2018. Like, what are those goals that you set yourself for yourself that you were able to accomplish?
It was just that. It was just the dream car. It was like,
Oh,
I
okay.
don't care about anything else until I get to this 100 number. And I just became obsessed with that. Day in and day out. I ultimately ended up going back into the workforce. The business was at like 7 or 8K a month, but I didn't quite feel ready to take the plunge. I'd invested a lot into my career at that point, and I just wasn't ready to pull the pin on it. So I went back to kind of the double life for 3 or 4 months, which ultimately, it actually made me really sick. I was sleeping like 4 hours a night and started doing a little bit of like coaching calls, and then I was trying to run the ads in the group, and I was working like 70 hours a week, and it was a mess. And my blood pressure went through the roof, and I got home one day and I was like, yeah, something's wrong. My heart was like, pounding out of my chest. But it was, I just became obsessed with that one thing, and watching that dashboard and trying to get it to nudge up. And ultimately one night, it was cool. I had a mate who flew in from the UK, and literally as he landed, I was with another guy, and we're about to head out for a big night, and it ticked over to the 100. And so, suffice to say, we had a pretty big celebration that night. I think there's a live in my group somewhere of me pretty inebriated celebrating.
Yeah,
but it's like, hey,
awesome,
you gotta let your hair
yeah.
down once you hit it. It had been 18 months in the process, multiple countries, a lot of energy invested, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So it was just that one target for me at that point in time.
And it's so amazing. Like, you set that as your goal. What I think is beautiful about it is it was very specific. It wasn't like, I want to see how many referrals I can get, or I want to get as many as possible. It was like, I want to get to the 100 for the dream car. And that specific goal, I believe, is extremely important if you want to achieve anything, because you have to know what you're shooting for. You have to know what the target is. And when you hit it, it probably didn't matter what the goal was, whether it was your first referral, your first 100, or $100 billion, right? Because you set this goal for yourself. When you hit it, like, as you said, you had a fantastic night, probably enjoyed a few, and probably felt pretty good about yourself at that point, huh?
Yeah, and I think the big and I've done this in my life previously. Like, I made a post the other day on my profile. Here's a few things you may not know about me. And like the typical rhetoric in kind of the entrepreneurship space is like, school sucks. I was crap at school. I hate college. I hate university. And that wasn't my experience at all. Like, I was really good in high school. I studied my ass off. I finished number 1 out of 250 kids. And I set that as a goal at the start of that year. And in hindsight, now I can look back and it's the exact same thing. It's like, I want that thing, and I'm just going to do what it takes in order to achieve it. And I think what ultimately starts to happen, having now repeated that process quite a few times, is you just start to trust yourself more, right? Is you start to be able to sit with yourself in a quiet room and go, maybe the things aren't going the way that I want them to right now, but I don't have a shadow of a doubt that I will get there, because I know I'm just not going to stop. And the more times you do that, the more times you pick that one thing, you don't have to put a time frame on it, because what happens is people go, oh, I want that thing. I want it in 90 days. They get past the 90 days. They haven't done it, and they view it as a failure. And it's like, well, that's stupid. What's the more important, that you achieve the thing or that you achieve it in 90 days? And it's like, why are we in such a big rush? Well, like you got somewhere to be? You got like 80 years. It's fine. Slow the fuck down. And you just start to trust yourself more. And like, I was talking about this with someone the other day. One of my mentors were trying to get to like a new level and trying some things. We're getting a bit of static on certain things. And he's like, dude, I want you to really push through. And I'm like, mate, if there's one thing you don't have to worry about with me is that I will not stop. Like, I promise you, you do not stress about me going anywhere. And it's because you do that time and time and time again, you can sit with confidence and go, I just won't stop. And I know that. And that's a huge competitive advantage, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because at least I can say from my personal standpoint is it really doesn't matter how long it takes to hit your goal, because once you do, you don't care how long it took, right?
Right. And most people's goals are like, I want to make 50 grand a month, right? And let's say their living costs are like 10 or less than that, 5, 6, 7, whatever. It depends on the part of the world you're in. It's like, once you get past that, what do you actually need? Or your incremental happiness that you'll be able to associate with that extra 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 grand a month is negligible, right? You're not going to derive a ton of happiness from each incremental $10,000 that you make. You're going to derive incremental happiness from actually enjoying your life while you go about making that, not from the money itself. And so if you're doing it in a way that's not sustainable, you're doing it in a way that you hate your life, you've got it completely backwards. So I'm a big fan of picking the target, slowing down, and building it really organically. I don't mean organically in the marketing sense. I mean it in like a natural way, not synthetically, so to speak.
Yeah, it's almost as like slow, steady wins the race. You set up your goals.
Tortoise and hare.
Yep, just like that. So after being successful with like different affiliate programs, when did you shift into like creating your own digital product or anything like that?
Yeah, so the ClickFunnels thing happened in I think it was August 2018. Then I quit my job in September 2018, and because I got kind of sick with the blood pressure thing, I took a couple of months off and was like, where do I want to go from here? A lot of the people around me in the space were also kind of ClickFunnels obsessed. And one thing I was conscious of was not becoming like the ClickFunnels guy. Like, I didn't want to get pigeonholed. And so while I had the opportunity to keep doing what I was doing, I wanted to take on a new challenge, and I wanted to make sure that the brand or my name wasn't just becoming associated with ClickFunnels. I wanted to be able to do different things. And so that's when I started exploring other affiliate products, stumbled into the high ticket stuff with Legendary. That became the focus for the next 6 or 7 months. Again, one target, platinum, head down until you get it. Obviously, I had a lot more skills behind me at that point. I had a lot more resources to reinvest because we had the recurring income from ClickFunnels. And so naturally, the goals will speed up as you get more experience, as you get more resources behind you, you get more capital. And so that was from like September until I think May the next year that took me. That was around the same time as the Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi thing that Brian mentioned off the top. That was like a little 1 month launch. And then after that, it was really interesting because financially things were amazing. Like that launch, I did 100 grand in a day.
Wow.
And it, like I had money, I was fine. Right. And then I got back from the US from speaking at the Legendary event. And I love being around people. I love, hanging out and chatting. I can talk underwater. It's where I draw energy from. I used to work obviously in a really like high energy environment, and I'd completely isolated myself, and I was just sitting in an office all day, like not talking to anybody, working from home, in the suburbs, having come from the busiest city in the world, working in this. And it was just, it just hit me like a ton of bricks when I got back. And I kind of dipped into a pretty bad mental state for like 3 months. I just like sat on the couch, watched Big Bang Theory over and over and over again. And I just couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then I went to Santorini. I remember this. I went to Santorini in Q3 2019 at this point for a friend's wedding. I remember sitting, waiting to get on the plane to come home. And sometimes it's the simplest things, but I was like, fuck, I just need more people around me. And it was like the dumbest thing. But I was like, I've just completely isolated myself. I couldn't, but when you're so close to it, sometimes you can't see the most obvious stuff. And so I texted a couple of guys that I'd connected with in the space. And I was like, dudes, I've got this idea. I don't want to do it on my own. I want to bring you along with me. They had kind of their own individual expertise as well that I knew would be complementary to the project. And we put our head down, and that was what ultimately became my first kind of proper product, which was SAA, which is still running today. We launched a beta of that in Q4 2019. We put like 40 people into it at $1,000 a head with just like a checkout page and some posts. And then they became the initial intake that we kind of nurtured. And then the program took off from there in 2020 when we ultimately took it kind of live. And then that was really the start of me creating my own stuff from there.
Yeah. So you started this program, SAA, Super Affiliate Accelerator, which is, by the way, one of the very few courses that teach affiliate marketing and marketing in general that I've actually ever purchased. That's how much respect I have for you.
There we go.
And some people might be listening and thinking, well, Brian, you've promoted the same stuff prior to that. You've had success, and why would you buy an affiliate marketing course? And I think there's just a certain mentality that you have if you want to continue to grow, where you seek out knowledge, especially from people who might be doing things a little bit differently than you. So it was, I went through it. Fantastic course. Obviously knew how to do affiliate marketing, but just got a ton of value from it. And that course ended up doing very well. I think, it wasn't, was it a year? Was it 18 months? And then you won the 2 Comma Club award for that, generating over $1 million.
I think we launched the beta in like November 19, and then January 21, it crossed the million. So yeah, like 14 months or whatever that is, 15.
Yeah,
months.
that's incredible. Congratulations on that, especially Thanks, being your first product. That's pretty impressive. So before we get into like kind of what happened from there, I kind of want to look for a pattern here. I'm big on patterns. Not just in marketing, not just in business, but in life. And if you can identify things that are true across the board, then you can kind of use those as tools to find success in other locations. So as we look at your journey from, starting, promoting ClickFunnels behind the scene, then going into legendary marketer, more publicly, and then the big launch with the $100,000 day with the Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, knowledge broker business or whatever. I think they've changed that name like 4 different times. So it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint that down. And then into your own course, what are some patterns with your marketing specifically that you can identify as things that just continue to work, or the 20% of activities that gets 80% of the results, or just anything that you can kind of find that's congruent across everything that has brought you success?
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple of non-marketing things, and then we'll talk on the marketing stuff. I think the one of the big ones is what we just touched on in terms of like setting that one goal. Because I did that again with SAA. I was like, dudes, let's make this the 2 Comma Club. And there's a post on my profile from like October 19. And I've just shared a photo of like the little trinkets and stuff that I've kind of accumulated at that point. And it says next stop, $2cc. And so it was like, that was the goal. And we just did it again. It was the same thing that I'd done 3 times, 4 times at that point. So that's like the ultimate life hack to me when it comes to achieving things, is just pick that one thing. And it sounds boring, it sounds simple, but most people don't do it ever. So that's definitely a common thread, and I still use that to this day. And I encourage my clients to do the same thing. I think the other common thread is like brutal consistency. There's been very few periods going back to when I launched the group in 2018 where I haven't been posting nearly daily, aside from where life's thrown me a couple of curveballs, like when I got sick. I went through a relationship breakup after like 10 years, just tough times in life when sometimes you have to step back. Aside from that, it's been like nearly daily for 5 years, right? Just sharing the story, sharing the journey, sharing the lessons. And I guess this flows into marketing, right? I guess it's a mindset lesson in consistency, but it's also a marketing lesson, is I don't have a big audience. Like my audience, if you added up the group, the profile, little YouTube channel, email list, it's maybe 20, 25,000 people. And that's if they were all paying attention, which they're definitely not, right? And so it's a tiny audience, but it's yielded, I don't know, probably north of $4 million at this point. And I think that a big part of that is because through that ruthless consistency, they've seen the evolution, or if they join new, they can go back and see the evolution of this guy that went from, being in the office, literally running home on his lunch break to do lives and talk about SEO and blogging in 2018. Like I literally still had my suit on because I'd come from the office. The whole life evolution to, where things are now. And I'm really grateful and lucky where they are now. But I think through that consistent sharing of the story every day, you just bring people along on such a powerful journey. And it means that people buy from you again and again and again. And the people that you work closely with stick around for a really, really long time. Like I've got inner circle clients and one-to-one clients that I work with for years, which is pretty unheard of in the internet marketing game. People are usually pretty in and out. So I guess if you want to distill that down into a lesson, which comes from my corporate days in a big way, is your biggest asset is going to be your relationships, right? Relationships are everything. And people will go, well, that sounds simple, but that's what your content is doing. It's building relationships at scale is the way that I look at it. And if you think about brand for me is just the collective of the relationships that you have with your audience. Because what is a brand? Brand is what we think about a product, a service, a collection of those things, a person, whatever. And so when you add up all of those thoughts from everyone in your audience, the reputation that you've built, that is your brand. And so when I think about brand, I think about relationships at scale, and how you build that is through your content. So that's been another really key part for me. More recently, in the last kind of couple of years, it's learning, and I guess taking that component one step further, which is you can make your life really easy if your content does a good job at pre-selling, right? If your content is very generic and like you just share Stripe screenshot, you might be attracting people who go, hey, I want to make that money too, but they've got no idea about any other details other than that. They're not educated, right? And that's where people get stuck in really drawn out sales processes. They have to do really long sales calls. They need, webinars. They need all this other stuff. Whereas 90% of our business now is done through a couple of text messages. And I'm not talking small stuff. Like this is $20, $30, $40, $50,000 deals with a couple of texts, because the marketing is doing all of the heavy lifting. So I think through that consistency and through that sharing that journey, learning, hang on, I can take a lot of the weight off the sales process in the business if the marketing, aka the pre-selling, does the heavy lifting in its place. And I prefer to put the weight there because it's leveraged. Right. Your marketing goes out one to many, it goes out to thousands of people in an instant. I can write a post, I can share it everywhere. I'd rather put the weight, and it compounds on certain platforms. I'd rather put the weight there than on a one-to-one sales process. So I guess that's another lesson, a marketing lesson that's really evolved out of consistently sharing the stories. So they're probably the main ones for me that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, so consistency, and then not any type of content. It has to be the right content, right? Like you don't want to see screenshots of how much money you made today and stuff like that.
I mean, they have a place, right?
Right.
They have a place, especially if you're trying to attract, new eyeballs, top of funnel type attention. They absolutely have a place. But if you want to spend your whole day, or you want to have your team spend your whole day explaining what it is that you do, you'd stop there, right? But if you want it to be hey, can you send me the link to pay you 10 grand? You got to take it. You got to take it further than that, right? I always say to my folks, there's two things you ultimately need to pre-sell people on, and it's you, right? Like they need to align with your values, your sense of humor, your style, your philosophies, all this kind of stuff. And they need to understand what it is that you actually do. And then if you take that second pillar one step further, it's what do you do relative to what everyone else in the market does? And how is that different? How is it unique? The more innovative it is, the less objections you're going to get. The more it sounds like stuff they've seen before, the more objections you're going to get, plain and simple. Right. So they're the two things that we're always trying to knock over. I mentioned before, I put up a post the other day about like, here's, X things you may not know about me. That's all pre-selling me. Right. I'm like, I like a drink. I don't mind gambling. I'm not religious. Like, and these aren't things said to offend or to piss people off. It's just like, this is me. And you can either like it or not like it. And that's going to draw people in, or it's going to, if like the fact that I'm, not religious, that may be a deal breaker for some people, right? They might be like, no, I only want to align with someone who is Christian. And that's totally cool. But I'm not going to hold back who I am, because otherwise we end up in dynamics where it's not a fit, right? Like I swear on my coaching calls and I swear in my content. It's just who I am. I get excited, I swear. Right. And if you're not okay with that, we definitely shouldn't lock arms. Right. And so creating a lot of content to make sure people truly know who you are, so that they're not surprised after they pay. I think people water themselves down in their marketing because they're scared of offending. And then they get comfortable with their clients, and it creates this huge gap where people pay them and then they get in and they're like, holy crap, who is this person that I paid? Right. You got to align those two things, and that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, remove any potential surprises, and
right.
Just it attracts the right people,
Right.
which can perhaps maybe on the surface reduce any refund rates depending on the structure of the business, but certainly make your life more enjoyable as the leader of the program, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have a beer test with my clients. I'm like, would I sit down and have a beer with you? And if the answer is no, it's like, we're not doing this. I don't care what the money is. And I guess that's the point, is you got to get the business to the point where you can actually reject sales and reject deals. I think, people have lifestyle creep. People increase the costs in their business too quickly because they try and outsource things really aggressively, or they make things too complicated. They take on all of this team, right? Like my team is me and my VA. And my VA is like, that's through an agency, and it's like $500-600 a month because he's part-time, and we still do the numbers that we do. People just outsource so aggressively. They end up with like 10 grand a month in fixed costs, which means that they have to sell to certain people. And it's like, any wonder your life sucks.
Right. You get into a situation where you got it coming from both angles. Your team's growing too big, and your car payments and your boat payments are growing too big. And now you have to do things that you don't want to do to make the monthly. And that just ruins any sort of lifestyle, really. So
and the killer is when you do that, you become needy, which just crushes sales.
Right.
Not in a good way. Like people can tell, they can smell it. Whereas when you, like, one of my favorite lines to use in the DMs is, I think you should sleep on it. No one says that. Everyone's like, pay me now. And I'm like, look, if you're not 1,000%, go sleep on it. Talk to your wife, talk to your goldfish, like whoever the fuck you need to talk to, go do it. Because unless you're 100% in, let's not do it. Right. And that's not me just posturing. That's like, I got money in the bank. I don't need this deal to happen today. My life changes zero. Some people may say that sounds arrogant. It's just the facts. And people need to get their business and their life to that point ASAP so that they can fully detach from sales. And then you can literally be like, I am the chooser in my world. I've got 20,000 people. I'm creating my content. Let's see who comes in. I can also outbound people, and I just cherry pick and I go, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I don't want to work with you. You leave forever, block, right? Like I can choose the people that I want to work with, but you can't do that until you're in a financial position to be able to say no to people.
Yeah. You don't want to work with the wrong person, right? Somebody that can work well with you. You don't want to work with somebody that doesn't, correct?
Exactly.
So what are those conversations looking like? Because I do a lot of my marketing through DMs. Do you have like some type of framework that you follow to every single person that you talk to?
No, not really. I mean, it really depends on where they've come from in the situation. I mean, that's not true. There's definitely a framework. It's like, are you meeting certain qualifications? And depending on the product, that will change. If it's like a course, typically what I recommend to people is have a couple of like really binary qualifications. Like I've got this course that's floating around out there called the Fast Cash Rolodex, which is just like I've put different strategies that we've used across the journey to bring in anywhere from like $5,000 to 150 grand. And it's just kind of like a swipe and deploy type approach. Obviously, people's results will vary depending on the product and the audience and stuff. But if I'm selling that and it's $1,000, if someone hits me up about it, I'm going, sweet, happy to send you the link. Just confirm for me, do you have an offer over $500 that you want to sell more of? And you've got at least 1,000 people in your audience. Because I know if they don't have those two things, their results are going to suck, in which case I don't want them to buy it. Right. So if it's like a course like that, I'll just qualify on a couple of binary points. If it's more of like a inner circle, which is like a small intimate mastermind, or one-to-one, we're going a bit deeper. I want to understand what they want help with. I want to understand what they've tried previously. I want to understand where their headspace is at in terms of goals and, you know, how fast they want to hit them. Because if they've got an unreasonable runway, all that's doing is they're just going to transfer their stress onto me. And again, it's not my jam. I don't want to do it. Right. There's usually no reason for the rush. So we're talking through those fairly standard, like one-to-one sales type pillars. But I try to boil these things down. So like with the content where I said, you want to pre-sell people on you and what it is that you do relative to the market. In the DMs, for me, the two big boxes that you need to tick are, is there a clear thing that they want my help with? Right. And obviously, is that something I can help them with? And two, is it something that they want to do now? Right. Because they might be like, oh, I need to change now. But if they have no idea what that actual change is or what they want to accomplish, or like, and they're just a mess, it's probably not ideal. Right. Flip side, they might be like, yeah, I really want to do that thing. But if they're like, summer's coming, I'm going away for 3 months, then again, there's no point. So you really need those two boxes ticked, which is, I want to do something. I'm clear. I want to change this thing, and you're my dude, and I want to do it now. Without those two things, there's really no point having the conversation and no point making the offer at that point, because it's just going to get dragged out.
Yeah.
So there's a inner circle one-to-one. Is that kind of your main focus now?
Yeah, so I've played around with a couple of different structures with it. It started just as inner circle, and then recently I kind of got this, and I don't get too woo-woo in my stuff, but something inside me was like, I just want to go deeper with people for a little while. And so I've been focused on that for the last little while, and will continue. A part of that was also simplifying. I've got my first kid arriving in like 4 weeks. And so it was a matter of like trimming down the business pretty aggressively to just like a core thing. So that's been part of that as well. So yeah, it's inner circle and one-to-one are kind of the main element of it at the moment, while life enters a new phase. So just, you know, hanging out with really cool people and doing calls here and there and talking on strategy and all that kind of jazz, which I love. And then we'll get through the baby thing in July and August, and hopefully things, you know, normalize a little bit, and then I'll get back into, you know, maybe creating some other offers here and there and doing what I do.
Spoken like a true first-time parent who's
yeah, completely ignorant.
You gotta normalize. Your life's gonna completely change, buddy, and it's gonna be fantastic. I mean, it changes all for the better, but it's night and day. But anyways, okay, so you're doing the one inner circle one-to-one right now. You know, I've kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I pay attention to you. I've already said probably once or maybe twice, you know, where I hold you as far as regard and how much respect I have for you. So I always keep an eye on you because I know I can learn something from you. But when you're talking about simplifying and streamlining, you know, in just the content I've seen over the years, you know, I believe there was a point where maybe there was too much stress. Because if you have this desire to simplify and streamline, that must have come from maybe a little bit of pain. So if that is true, like I said, I don't want to put words in your mouth. If that is true, maybe some of the audience members who aren't quite there yet could benefit from you having hindsight, sharing what stressed you out.
Yeah. I mean, 2020, when that first info product blew up, like we sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units. and I wasn't really equipped to like, I didn't understand the concept of boundaries and hadn't set them correctly. And life very quickly became hell is probably the appropriate word. And so I had to kind of backtrack and then went and studied like all the Dan Kennedy stuff and got a lot of boundaries and stuff in place. But that year of, enrolling 500 people or whatever it was into a thing for a couple of grand taught me that volume's not my jam. Like I'd rather go kind of more narrow with fewer people. Doesn't mean you can't sell volume in front end things that are a little bit more protected as long as the relevant boundaries and stuff are in place. But yeah, it was pretty stressful. There's obviously also things associated with our industry and the static that you can get from certain people who don't necessarily like what we do, which I'm sure you've both faced. When you're the head of the machine, it comes right at you really aggressively. And there were just a couple of situations where I didn't particularly enjoy. And it doesn't bring a good vibe. And so I'm like, I'm just going to go smaller, go narrow with my people, and shelter myself from that crap, because you just don't need it. And you can make the same, if not more money. You just got to do it in a slightly different way. So it was probably a couple of elements, but the main one was just the huge volume. And I mean, more people is more problems, period. Like it's just the way that it is. So that was the main thing for me. It taught me some amazing lessons though.
Yeah, one thing I learned from managing not just multi-million, but big restaurants is that the shit typically rolls uphill. It defies gravity somehow, but it just does. So you've gone from, this SAA, super affiliate accelerator, which from my experience in that niche or industry or market, you're typically dealing with maybe people who want to start their first side hustle or want to start their first ever business, or maybe working full time, and then they want to do something on the side so they can quit that. Then you go to inner circle one-on-one stuff where you've thrown out some numbers of 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 or $50,000. So that leads me to believe that those are probably people who have established businesses who maybe are looking to get to the next level or simplify. So just out of my curiosity, like what are some of the differences of working with those two, not polar opposite, but those two different demographics or those two different client bases?
Yeah. I mean, the first 10 grand is the hardest period. Like helping people start is the most challenging niche you can be in, because not only do you have to give them, like, the strategy is easy. You've got to like be their babysitter, their psychologist, their everything, right? Their mum, their dad, like you've got to, because it's such a foreign concept. Like people say they want to start a business. I think what most people actually want is just a method to make money. It gets described as, I want to start a business. I don't think most people actually want to start a business. I think they just want a way to make money, which is two very, very different things. But you have to, you've got to guide them through so many different things, because society is not geared to, you could invest hundreds of hours into this thing and not make a cent. And you probably will when you start. We're ingrained from day one to, if I invest 100 hours, I make 100 hours times my hourly rate back. Right. And a lot of people really struggle to detach hours from immediate income, realizing that they're actually building up goodwill, they're building equity, and that's ultimately the thing that you're going to monetize in the future. So that's one element of it that I enjoy more about working with folks now who are further along, is that I don't have to like coach them through the idea of, look, there's stuff you're going to do that's not going to work. There's stuff you're going to invest time in that may not yield an immediate financial gain. It may never yield a financial gain, but it's still worth doing. So a bit, not that we don't touch on the mindset stuff, but it's not those kind of fundamental shifts of paradigm that have been ingrained for like 30, 40 years. And it's like flogging a dead horse sometimes. So that's one element of it. But it's such a cool challenge as well at the same time when you do see those light bulbs go off for people and they genuinely break through. You can't quite match that feeling when you see people make their first grand or make their first 10 grand. That never gets replicated. So that's kind of the other side of the equation. On the more strategic side, the folks that have already got some momentum, they just have some assets and stuff, so we can typically move a bit faster, and we can deploy stuff and get feedback more quickly and iterate and troubleshoot and all that kind of jazz. So it's just a natural evolution. I think, you start out working with folks at a certain level and you kind of move up the levels progressively. But I'd say that fundamental mindset shift is a pretty big component of the main difference, and how fast you can move too.
But you also have different offers, right? Like maybe one's for beginners and then one for more experienced people.
Yeah. So I mean, something like SAA is for someone starting from the ground up, whereas Inner Circle 1-to-1, I'm typically looking for some kind of baseline income, or at least that they've got business experience before, or they've done something previously. Because even when folks get to that like 3 to 5K a month, the paradigm's changed. That like I don't need to validate for them that this works and that you can turn a laptop into dollars. They've seen it, they've done it. It's just about how do we dial it up, as opposed to me needing to completely overhaul their thinking about how this whole game works. So we've definitely got different things for different people, but the folks that I work really closely with are typically already in some form of momentum.
Yeah, there's a different level of expectation, because they've been following you. They know that they're going to have to trust you and work together with you, and it will yield a result. Size can vary, but one thing that I wanted to talk about before we get too late in the hour here is we're moving along, and I could just talk to you forever. But one thing I noticed about the industry is that you can almost pinpoint who trained who, because there's a certain culture, there's a certain speak, there's a certain way that trickles down from leadership. And if I think of Jacob Caris, there's a lot of things I think about, but one thing I think about is the offer doc. So I don't know if you created that, but this offer doc, this Google sheet, that's something that I think about you when I see, maybe that's unfair, but
no, that's completely fair.
What can you tell me about the offer doc then? What sort of secrets are baked in there? What sort of value? You don't have to describe the whole thing, but what sort of value could you provide to the audience?
So I mean,
that?
Like credit where credit is due. We were selling in the DMs a lot with SAA and stuff like that. And then when I ultimately got fed up with doing like strategy calls altogether, it was something that I wanted to go deeper on. So Travis Sago is the OG of the like Google Doc thing. And I'm in his mastermind and have been in there a couple of years. And so we were already doing it. Travis helped deepen the knowledge around selling without sales calls effectively. How do we describe this? So effectively what it's doing is you're taking the offer that you would otherwise probably make on a call after 45 minutes or so. That's what typically most people do on a free strategy session. You're taking that offer and you're boiling it down, you're 80-20ing it, if you want to use a phrase, into a document that could be anywhere from 2 to 10 pages long, right? Is there magic in the document itself? Maybe. Depends how good the copy is. There's definitely some strategies you can use when crafting an offer to make it lower risk for the purchaser and make it easier for them to say yes, 100%. Is there magic in the fact that it's a PDF or a Google Doc? Maybe. It's a little bit probably disarming because it doesn't feel like a typical sales pitch, feels more like a personalized letter. Do I think that's going to fundamentally make the difference? No. What this is the real magic trick. What you have to do in order to be able to eliminate calls and sell expensive shit is the relationship has to be built to a certain point before they see the offer, or they see the offer and then you have to work to continue to build the relationship. So what 90% of the industry is doing when they're selling 5K to 50K stuff on the phone is they call themselves quote unquote marketers. If you look at their content, it's very short. It's very pitch heavy. It's very surface level. And they're like, yeah, I'm a marketer. But what's really happening is that it's all going down in the DMs and it's all going down on the sales call. So if you think about, this is the way I kind of explain it to people, is if you imagine for someone to buy, they have to go from 0 to 100, right? And there's 3 components that make that up. There's the marketing, there's the sales process, the one-to-one component of it, and then there's the offer, all right? And we can choose to weight those 3 things, weight as in like allocate how much heavy lifting that thing does between those 3. So if you have an absolutely amazing, risk-free, like no-brainer offer, your marketing can be crap. Your sales process can be like, hey, idiot, do you want the thing? Right? And then it could be 100 grand. But if the offer is so on point, it can do 98% of the heavy lifting. Right? Now there's practical limitations to that, such that we have to reallocate part of that weight to the sales process and part of that weight to the marketing. Frank Kern always talks about the offer example of like a dude that's been in prison for like 10 years and he comes out and Angelina Jolie standing there and she's like, hey, do you want to have a night with me? It's like she doesn't need a big sales pitch for that, right? You know, it's like the offer relative to who it's being delivered to. So you can shift the weight between these three pillars. And so what most people are doing is the offer's, you know, average, the marketing's average, and because of that, and there's no right or wrong here. It just depends how you want to spend your time. Because of that, let's say each of those are taking up 10% of the weight, so you're at 20% in total. 80% of the game is in the one-to-one DM conversation and on the call. What they're fundamentally doing is they're just reallocating the relationship building into a 45-minute call. There's nothing wrong with that. It works. When you want to be able to eliminate that call, what do you have to do? You have to reallocate the relationship building somewhere else in the process, or you have to improve the offer, or both. Because when you're eliminating the call, the DMs are doing like maybe 10% of the work. And so you've got to pick up 90% of the weight in the offer. And we can go into detail about that, but that's like, how specific is it? Who is it for? How much risk do they feel like they're taking on? The pricing strategy, all that kind of jazz. How much pain are they in, right? All that kind of stuff is going to dictate how strong the offer is. And so once we do our best on the offer, and there may be limitations in terms of how far you want to take the offer. You may not want to offer huge guarantees. You may not want to offer money back. And they're all fine, but they're all limitations that increase the risk of the offer, which means that it's going to carry less weight in the transaction. Right. So let's say we get to the point where the offer's doing 30% of the heavy lifting, the DMs are doing 10% of the heavy lifting. There's only one bucket left, and that's the marketing. Right. And this is why I create a fair bit of longer form written video content, is to build that relationship such that I don't have to do it one-to-one in the DMs. Right. It's a sweet. Tell me about where you're at. Tell me about where you want to get to. What specifically do you want help with? Is this something you want to do now? Awesome. Here's the deets. Let's do it. Right. It's because the weight has been reallocated to the marketing instead of the sales process. That's the real trick and the real magic that's happening. And the best way to, I guess, explain it to people is like, I'll have someone who'll be in a circle for say a year, which, you know, is fundamentally a group. And then I might invite them to like full-time one-to-one where we've got, you know, a private Slack thread together. We meet twice a month, all that kind of stuff. And let's say that's a 4 or 5 grand a month offer. I don't need to give them a 3-hour webinar, right? It doesn't make sense. We've been working together for a year. We've done all this cool shit. I send them a message and I'm like, hey, our year's nearly up. Here's what I'm thinking for the next 12 months. Would love to invite you up to this level. Here's the details. Because the relationship has been built, the offer can be really simple, and the And the sales process can be really simple. And this is where I come back to branding being relationships at scale. Is how strong your brand is, how strong the message is that you put out there is going to impact how strong the relationships are that you build, which will make the sales process and the offer easier to move without needing to, pound the phones. So hopefully that answers your question.
That was great.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, and we're also, let's say somebody goes through your system, right, and they don't really take action, they don't purchase. What things do you do to follow up with those people?
Probably not nearly as much as most people do. And there's a distinction here between what I advise my clients to do and what I do, because they're in a different position. I don't follow up as hard as I used to because of what we were talking about before. Like, I just don't need the deal. So I'm not in a phase where I want to be convincing. If they don't see it and they don't feel it at that point in time, I might touch base periodically every few months and be like, hey, has anything changed? But if they're not 1,000% in, it's like, sweet, let's do it another time, right? They drop back into reading my posts, watching my videos, nurture until such a time, maybe in the future, that we get the transaction done. Can you follow up more aggressively with your typical follow-up structure? One thing I like to do, I don't do it at the moment because I don't have someone selling for me, but in the past where I've had someone doing the DMs for me, is like value-based follow-up. So instead of where most people are like, hey, it's just the same shit. It's like, hey, based on our conversation and you saying you want help with this, here's a YouTube video that literally will help you with this. Right. And obviously that takes a bit of time and customization, but you can see how that fuels stronger relationships than those stupid like GIFs where it's like, hey, did you die, that people use when they follow up. It's like, no, I'm just not responding to you right now. Yeah. So that's one thing I like to do in follow up when I've got the time, or if someone's doing it for me, is more value based. But it all just comes down to, is the relationship at the point where they're ready to make the jump? So whatever you can do to continue to nudge that along is advantageous.
And you've been in this game long enough to know, and you've certainly seen the monetary proof that, if someone got to the point where you're talking to them about an offer, then they've probably been digesting your content for a while. So if it's not right for them now, guess what? They're going to continue to digest your content. They're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Right. And because you have the luxury of patience.
And if it doesn't happen, it's not meant to be.
Exactly. Then they'll come around when the time is right, if the time is right. So normally we get to this point, we start talking about the future, but you kind of gave us a little hint on that. You've been all about simplification. You do have mini JC coming in a few weeks here. So once again, super excited for you. Congratulations, and wishing you all the best with that. And then I'm sure you'll get to a point where, hey, maybe it'll bring some time to reevaluate, or maybe it'll bring some new perspective. Who knows? Kids do amazing things to us. So we'll just kind of skip ahead since we're getting close to the end anyways. And one thing we like to do, Jacob, is kind of turn the tables a little bit here and just give you the opportunity, if you so choose, to ask any questions of us.
Where do you guys see the industry going with, the significant uncertainty in the global landscape at the moment?
Yeah, you're talking about digital products in general. What marketing, internet?
Yeah, I mean, you guys obviously play more in the affiliate world, but I guess this online education space, AI, there's a lot of kind of disruptors and different things. I guess what's your take on where things sit? I mean, it always feels like any industry is in a precarious position. People never say things feel stable. It's either like shooting the lights out or it's in the can. There's very little in the middle. But yeah, I suppose where do you guys see things?
It's really interesting to me. So I look at the industry or whatever, and I don't think I could even predict what's going to happen with AI. I just think that it's going to be here, if it's not already, a lot faster than we can even imagine. If you think that the rate of technology, doubles every year or what have you, then this world could look completely different in 2 years or in 18 months. And I just don't think we realize how close we are if we're not already there. But I'm not smart enough, nor do I have enough study on the subject to even give my opinion on AI. But what I can say about the industry in general is, I've been in this game for about 11 years now, and it becomes more sophisticated, and the free line, as I like to say, moves. And what I mean by that is it used to be pretty simple. Run a 5-minute VSL, ads to a 5-minute VSL, and you could sell a product. Okay. Yep. Well, now here we are, and you look at the biggest players in the industry, and you look at the Alex Hermosis of the world, and they're really giving away the playbook for free with some sort of long-term back-end win. And where I used to do all my marketing by creating educational content on YouTube, now I offer free courses, right? So the free line moves is one thing that happens over time, but the other thing that happens is more people enter the game. So whereas there may have been a lot less competition back in the day when Frank Kern was selling Mass Control and making $18 million or whatever in 6 months or whatever he did, that's probably not going to happen anymore. But there's plenty of room for all of us now, because instead of 100,000 buyers, now maybe there's 10 million. And then in 5 years, maybe there'll be 100 million or a billion buyers for our industry. So I think if you're kind of sitting on the sidelines and wondering if it's too late, I would say it's never too late. May as well get into the game right now.
Yeah, like as far as AI, I feel like it's just evolving. I feel like it's just going to evolve way too fast, Like in 6 months from now, it's going to be completely different. That's what I feel like is happening with that. And right now, I'm diving into the Spanish market. So that market is like 10 years behind, right? So I'm just trying to like educate them and showing them about like the different type of softwares and stuff. And it's hard. It's hard work right now, especially because I just started doing it, But eventually in the future, everything's going to kind of like lined up, I guess you can say, with the markets. So hopefully that happens and we can, move forward from there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know a few guys that I've got a client who's in the French market and or the French speaking market. He's from Switzerland, and we've taken kind of the same concepts and deployed them into that market, and he's crushing it. It's always interesting to me when he was like, when he reached out about joining Inner Circle, he's like, I speak French, is that cool? And I was like, bro, as long as you don't expect me to read it, it's fine. It's like, this stuff translates. It's all human nature and psychology. So it's funny, like he converts all of his copy into English, so it's like broken English. I'm like, look, I don't know if this is a language thing, but I probably wouldn't say that. And then he converts it back, and it's like, it's sweet. It's really cool to see when you deploy them into different markets, how it goes.
Yeah, I hired a couple of copywriters too, and they wrote some stuff for me in Spanish, and it's just like, that doesn't sound right, man. Like, are you sure you're speaking Spanish?
Yeah, it's an interesting opportunity that Andre has with the Spanish-speaking market, because it's got kind of a second chance to be a first mover, I think, is the way I see it. So, it's very interesting. It drew a lot of interest from our last guest on the last show, Marissa Romero, because her husband is entering the Spanish-speaking market. So there's definitely anyone listening. It's not something I'm going to enter by any means, but it's something that seems to be a pretty good opportunity. But like you said, Jacob, it's really universal. I mean, I know one thing that we've agreed on in the past is, all the shit works. It's just you got to figure out how you want your life to look and what you want to make work for you. So I really do appreciate your time. I mean, more than I can really put into words. It was truly an honor to have you on the podcast. If someone liked what they heard and wanted to track you down, what's the easiest way for someone to get a hold of you, Jacob, and learn more about what you do and what you have to offer?
Yeah, they can go to jacobcaris.com, www.jacobcaris.com. They can go find me on YouTube. There's hundreds of videos there. It's pretty relaxed stuff. I'm very low production value. Or Facebook is probably where I post. My profile is where I post the most. So one of those three would be the best bet if they wanted to kind of follow along and see what we're up to.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time. Congratulations again on the baby on the way. And
Thank you.
I mean, the best things are about to happen.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. Well, we'll make sure we'll link those contact information notes or whatever in the show notes or the description of the video, depending on where you're watching. And everyone who tuned in, I'm sure you learned a lot. and go follow Jacob, because he does. He's brutally consistent, as I think he mentioned, and you'll learn a lot from him. And I use stuff regularly that I picked up from this gentleman. So thanks again, and we'll see everybody on the next episode of the Evolved Marketing Podcast.